Hi there, I'm Nemisha Patel Owen, and you're listening to Live Your True Self, episode number 53. After 18 years doing corporate, in 2018 it became about doing me and doing what I love. It wasn't that long ago that I too felt stuck, lost, and asking myself, who am I anyway, and what's my purpose? Full of self-doubt, fear of failure, and confusion. Fast forward to this moment and you'll see a version of me that's true to myself, calm, confident and clearer than ever before, inspired by Krishna's words in the Bhagavad Gita, one must deliver himself with the help of the mind and not degrade himself. The mind is the friend of the conditioned soul and his enemy as well. So perspective is everything, and no matter where you find yourself on your spiritual journey, allow me to guide you to drop out of your head the busyness in your mind and drop into your heart the sacred space that holds your beautiful soul, so that you too can awaken your true self and live life more meaningfully in this moment. Take a deep breath and listen on in. Hello, welcome back. How are you? I hope all is good with you as we embark on the month of May. I love this time of the year. Spring is in the air. The sun is definitely trying to come out and stay out. The rain is here also, but that's all good. Nature needs rain. So it's such a lovely time of the year. I am playing catch up. So full transparency. As I gave myself a day off this week, which is a good thing because I got to support my daughter with something, and I'm so grateful that I did. However, it was an unplanned day off, and therefore I didn't manage to turn this week's podcast episode around in time. Anyway, I made a decision and I love my reasons for it. Zero judgment. This is something I teach in my program, which is the art of decision making in Be the Energy program, the art of decision making, which is essentially weighing up two options, generally do the thing or don't do the thing. And in my case, it was take the day off or not take the day off, and obviously suffer the consequences in terms of the things I had to get done. So you have two options: do the thing or don't do the thing, and then you come up with all the reasons why you'd do the thing and all the reasons why you wouldn't do the thing, or do something different. Then you let that marinate. So you'd write that down, two lists, let that marinate, and then go back to the lists to determine which one feels right for you. And you'll know by the way it feels in your body. So either you'll feel this sense of expansiveness or tightness, or certainly less expansiveness, if that's even a word. I don't know. But you will feel it in your body in terms of which decision feels right for you in that moment, based on the information that you have. And then our job is to simply get to work loving all our reasons behind that decision, because our brain will want to talk us out of the decision and question our thinking. However, we made a decision based on certain things, and we get to love our reasons for that, and we get to stick to that decision until perhaps we get more information or circumstances change, and then we get to reconsider if that feels like the right thing to do. Anyway, I made a decision to take the day off and go do something for my daughter, and then play catch up. And this is what I'm doing. Anyway, if you want to learn more about decision making, mastery, come join Be the Energy, my signature coaching program. It's all online. and you can become better at decision making and make decisions that serve you without procrastinating and without time wasting. And just on that, something I picked up from my coach, which I love and always adopt, is that there is no right decision. There is only the decision that you make right. And so the process that I teach is exactly about that. It's exactly you making the decision that is right for you. So let me take this opportunity to share that Be the Energy program, 21-day journey within. Essentially, the promise from me is how to live your true self, doing what you love with confidence and without doubt holding you back. The program is launching again very soon. I've had some time to evaluate and make some decisions that serves you as the student and me as the guide. And so, again, I have made some important decisions that will enhance the program and the way it is run in a more meaningful way from the feedback that I certainly received. So I'm super excited to share that with you in the coming weeks. In the meantime, if you want to get some sneak peeks and early bird bonuses, come join the waiting list. Literally just pop your name and email and you will join the waiting list and you will get access to some inside things as I start gearing up for the launch. And you can come and join that at www.nemishapatelowen.com/be the energy. Be the energy. So go ahead and come and join the waiting list and you will get to hear so much more. So anyway, slight distraction. Going back to today, because I'm playing catch up. Today in this week's episode, I'm sharing what I call Mindset with Nemisha class I hosted, which received some really good feedback. And so I thought, why not share that here on the podcast? So that's what we're doing today. So let me invite you to grab your journal and a pen, because this is an interactive session and I'm sure you'll want to capture your thoughts. And what I am focusing on here is 4 things the unmanaged mind does. And I also share 3 simple steps to overcome that. And it is such a lovely training, such a lovely session. And I'm sure you will take away so much. So let me just say thank you for being here. And I hope you enjoy the class. So today we're talking about the 4 things the unmanaged mind does, and then I'll come on to how you can beat it. So let me ask, or let me start by asking you a question, which is this: what is the biggest time waster in our lives? What is the biggest time waster in your life? Right? Spend a minute thinking about that and capture whatever comes up for you in this moment. Right? What's the biggest time waster in your life right now? Just jot it down, right? Bullet points, just fire it all out, whatever's going on in your brain, whatever it's offering you. And I'll give you a moment to do that. Interesting to see what you come up with. Here's the thing. Our biggest time waster is not Netflix or our phone, right? Or the TV. Yes, they can be consuming. And in kind of this generation, we can spend a lot of time on them, right? We're all guilty of it, right? So it's not Netflix, it's not our phone, it's not TV, it's not sleeping, right? Or it's not anything we do externally, right? And you can see what you came up with on your list. It's none of those things unless you wrote our biggest time waster is our brain, right? It's our mind because it's overthinking and procrastinating and questioning and judging and spinning and swirling around, worrying, and comparing and doubting, right? One of the biggies that I work on and help my clients with. And I could go on, right? This is what our brain is busy doing. And therefore, that is in fact the biggest time waster. And I know there's some research somewhere. I don't have those stats, right? You can look it up, Google it, and see. But there was definitely some research done in the States to prove this based on some live interactions they did with some people. But the Bhagavad Gita, the Vedic scripture, as I say, mentioned in chapter 6, text 5, Krishna says, one must deliver himself with the help of his mind and not degrade himself. The mind is the friend of the conditioned soul and also his enemy too. All right. And it's the one text that has really inspired and fueled me to do this work. So, our number one job is to manage our mind, right? And let's just be clear, this is different to controlling the mind, right? It's not about controlling the mind, it's about managing the mind. Our mind has free will, right? And it will do what it wants, quite frankly. And if we're trying to control it, that's a different ball game, and that's not what it's about. It's about managing the mind and like befriending our mind, right? Make it our friend and not allow it to become our enemy, right? We've got to use our brain for us rather than against us and make it work in our favor in what we want to do and who we want to be rather than blocking it from doing those things. And I first learnt this idea when I was off sick back in 2018, just before I left corporate. And I had a cocktail of 3 different viruses. I lost my voice and I was super fatigued. I was poked and prodded. I had blood tests like daily, so it seemed. I had various procedures and scans and oh my gosh, like all the things. And was basically told there was nothing they could do, right? The results that were coming back from all these various tests were coming back okay. And I was repeatedly told that for someone my age and my wellness, that I should just recover. And after being off sick for 3 months, right, 12 weeks, and I distinctly remember this, right? And it was the 4th sick note that I got for another month, right? My GP wrote me off sick for another month, right? I knew something had to change, right? And it had to change from within, right? Because like medically and biochemically, so to speak, I was okay. And that was what the results were coming back as. Well, there was a few anomalies and I wasn't 100% in certain areas, but certainly there was nothing underlying and no biggie in terms of a diagnosis or a condition that I had. So it very much became mind over matter, right? Until that point, I was very much in like what I call default energy of, like this sucks, right? I'm sick and I'm tired. And what happens if I don't get better? I'm missing out on so much. I'm lonely, I've got nobody, right? What are people thinking of me at work? And what am I going to do? Right? There's just this underlying, oh my God, like, what is this? And what am I going to do? And my brain was essentially keeping me sick, right? Initially, right, early on, up to that sort of 12-week mark, it was focused on me not getting better. And in fact, there were times where I was actually imagining and daydreaming what it would be like if I didn't, right? How would I take care of my kids who were 1 and 5 back then, right? What would I do about work? And, my real desire to want to keep fit and active and be healthy. And, how would I fulfill my passion to help others navigate through change, which was what I was all about, right? And I was very much using my brain against me, right? Unknowingly, of course, right? Hindsight's a wonderful thing. Unknowingly, this is what I was doing. And then when I started like immersing myself into wellness practices and this idea of thoughts create results, right? What I'm thinking is who I become, right? The famous quote by the Buddha, and other things that I was exposed by, I realized that I can also focus on getting better, right? I can focus on how and what will help me recover faster. And from this energy, like, so much shifted for the better. Like, genuinely, this is who I am now, right? And I made it my mission to fuel my mind, body, and soul, right? All of it to get better, because there were so many different things I could do, so many different practices, different things work for different people. And I was kind of navigating what was good for me. Like, for example, I was veggie anyway, but I went vegan. I was spiritual anyway, but I went much deeper into yoga and meditation. I was a monk for 7 days at the Hare Krishna temple. I connected with nature, right? I went for walks and really immersed myself in the beauty of the world around me. And I used my brain for me, right? I took my brain to a place of seeing the goodness that was in front of me, the goodness that would fuel me to get better, and how I was in that life, right? As a well person doing my thing. And over time, thankfully, I got better. I left corporate, qualified as a coach, and started my beautiful business. And I like to think of it as a gift wrapped in sandpaper, right? Delivered perfectly from God, from Krishna at the time that I needed it and was ready for it. So, can you see how important it is to manage our mind, right? And it can be any scenario, right? No matter what you're going through, no matter who you are, right? We're all living humans and we all have the human brain, right? And if you have the human brain, it needs to be managed, right? It needs to be worked on, it needs to be exercised, it needs to be fueled, because the unmanaged mind does 4 things. And this is what we're sharing here and now. And to make it easy for you to remember, it's in the acronym MIND, right? So, number one is the unmanaged mind magnifies, right? And we spoke a little bit about that in my story, right? It magnifies problems and issues in a way that is just not the truth, right? It almost like over dramatizes the situation. And one of my clients recently was talking about like this idea of catastrophizing, right? It just magnifies a situation that may well be tricky, right? It may well be a challenge or something difficult that we're navigating, but it makes it into something that
it just isn't. It just is, right? It isn't, right? It magnifies it. It makes it bigger. It makes the problem seem so much more bigger and out of control and unmanageable. And genuinely, I experienced this in, as I say, that my batch of the sickness story, and I was like my brain was magnifying in terms of what I might have, and how bad it is, and then like I didn't even have the diagnosis, right? It wasn't even a thing, but my brain had gone there, and obviously that then just sent me down into, um, a train of thought that just did not serve me. So the brain magnifies. And my question to you is, how is your brain magnifying a problem or an issue for you right now? Right? Spend a minute to just think about that. How is your brain magnifying, right, a particular problem or situation that you're facing right now? Write it down. Like, what is it doing? How is it making something into something bigger and something it isn't, right? It's just not the truth. Have a think about that now and capture your thoughts. So, number two, the unmanaged mind likes to imagine. The unmanaged mind likes to imagine. It imagines thoughts and problems that are just not there, right? It manufactures a whole lot of drama that's just not useful, right? It imagines and sees things worse than they are, rather than just seeing them as it is, right? And the example here I'd use, which is one of my clients this week actually, and she had a meeting with her boss, and she had some feedback which went really well, and then she had a particular ask that she wanted to make about getting some help, and she had that conversation, and then afterwards we had a chat about it, and she wasn't overly pleased with how the conversation went. But interestingly, after the conversation she realized that actually the conversation went perfectly fine, right? Her boss didn't say no to the idea that she was presenting, and didn't think anything less of her or bad of her. But after that conversation, her brain totally just went to, oh, it's a no for me. It didn't work. The conversation was really, didn't go well. I didn't show up well. And it just imagined a whole scenario of how unhelpful it was and how it didn't go well, when it just wasn't the case. So when we spoke about, okay, what did you say? What did he say? And like, what was the reality of the situation? It was like, she realized that, oh, it wasn't actually that bad. It was actually really good. And at the end, she actually brought the conversation back and specifically pinpointed him to what would happen next, which again made the conversation very useful and productive, and gave her what she wanted. But in between, right before the coaching, her brain had imagined a whole sequence and train of things that was just not the truth. So our brain likes to imagine and problems and thoughts and take us down a path that's just not useful. So let me ask you, how is your brain imagining thoughts and problems that are not there or that are not useful? Right? Really ask yourself that question and take a minute, right? How is it just imagining and, going down a path that's not useful and is actually just not the case? Have a think about that now. Jot down what comes up for you. It likes to imagine. It likes to imagine. It's very creative, our brain. Right. So, number 3 acronym, the N in mind, is that our brain likes to neglect. Right? Our brain likes to neglect. It neglects to see the goodness in front of us, right? It neglects to see what you have done, what you have accomplished, the decisions that you have made, right? How you are doing really well, right? How good you are, right? How amazing you are. Um, and what's good about you, and it neglects the habits and routines that serve you and fuel you, that you do day in day out, right? And instead it focuses on the not so good, right? It focuses on what you haven't done yet and how behind you are, and how you're not good at something, and how you still got all this left to do, and how you said you would do this and you didn't do that. So it neglects to see all the good stuff and all the progress and all the achievement, and all, yeah, the goodness. And instead it focuses on the lack. And one of the examples I would use here is that I was trying to clean up my my gut, so to speak, and I was working on just trying to give my gut some relief. And I've been practicing intermittent fasting for ages, right? Absolutely ages. Probably just after I was in that sickness patch, as one of the good practices I could do. And like, it's just become habitual, right? I just do intermittent fasting. And for me, it looks like 14 hours of not eating and 10 hours of eating, essentially. And that makes up my 24 hours, right? And I have a set time of doing that, but essentially that's what it is. And my brain just decided to neglect the fact that I had been doing this amazing practice, and it was just giving me a hard time for, kind of not eating well. And I was getting into a little bit of extra treats and this and that. And it's just so minor. Like, it's so minor. But my brain just neglected the fact that, and actually, I've got a clean diet. I'm vegan. I do intermittent fasting, drink lots of water, herbal teas, like all the goodness. And it just chooses to forget that. And it's like, no, no, this is not what we're doing, right? So let me ask you, how is your brain neglecting to see the goodness that is in front of you, right? And like, pick a topic or pick a area of your life, whatever that might be, just quickly to capture, like, what's some of the goodness that your brain's just chosen to neglect and forget about and just kind of move on from. It's like, yeah, but look at all this stuff that you don't do and haven't done. Right? What is those things? Capture those now. So focused on all the lack. Loves to focus on the lack. But that's not what I'm about. I'm all about focusing on the goodness. So what is that goodness that you are already, and that you do already, and that you bring already? Like, what are those good things? Let's hear it. Capture those down. Okay. And the number 4, what the unmanaged mind does. The D is for, it distracts. It distracts us. 100%. It distracts us from doing the things that we set out to do, right? Who's set a goal, right? Who set a goal at the beginning of the year, beginning of the month, whatever it might be, um, with all good intention, got a plan, kind of know what you're doing, and then your brain just wants to distract you from that goal. Right? It wants to take you down a path of doing other stuff or focusing on other stuff. And it can be really sneaky. And it can do it in a way where it can be really innocent. And you think that, this is in service of the goal, and it really isn't, right? It is not what you set out and want to be doing. It but it distracts you, right? And the other example I would say is who has set an alarm, right? You set your alarm the night before um, to work out, right? And this doesn't happen to me, but it's just an example that I'll use if I may. But you set your alarm the night before. You have an intention of working out, doing yoga, going for a run, whatever it might be, right? You set out your clothes, you do everything, you know exactly what you're doing. It's all set. Put your alarm on. Come the morning, the alarm goes off, and what do? What does your brain offer you? Um, Sometimes it does offer me, I'm tired. I'm feeling tired, right? And I noticed that. And this really did come up when the kids were young and they were waking up, 2, 3 times a night, feeding or whatever it was, right? At the time, I can't even, oh, it was all a blur. But yeah, I often set the intention of doing the workout, but come the morning, it was just like, oh my gosh, I'm so tired. Like, no. But often, more often than not, thankfully, because my brain is actually just wired for being fit and active, and I just know the goodness that it brings. I had to just notice that thought, right? I had to notice that my brain was distracting me from what I want to be doing and what I intended to be doing. And then you have a choice, right? You have a decision to be made. What do you do? Do you listen to that distracted mind, or do you not listen to that distracted mind, right? And do you honor the intention that you set in the first place? So the brain likes to distract us from doing the things we set out to do. So, how is your brain doing that to you? How is it distracting you from your goal or from a particular project or an activity or an intention that you've set? And how is it sneakily distracting you from actually just committing to that and doing it? And it might be because of the discomfort, right, that it brings, right? The discomfort is usually the reason, right? There's some unwanted feeling that we don't want to be feeling that's preventing us from doing it. That's why your brain does that. But what is it, right? We'll come on to that another time. But what is it? Let's hear those distractions, capture those down for you so you know, right? And you can tell your brain, right? I'm on to you. I know exactly what you're doing and I get to decide. And on this occasion, we are committing to what I said. What are those things? Take a minute to capture those down. Our mind likes to distract us. And sometimes, right, it distracts us, right? This idea of, like you're driving and it's like habitual that you're going from A to B. And sometimes you don't even know that you've passed a particular milestone or a point, location, and you've got to wherever, and you're like, oh my gosh, I just don't remember passing, you know, that junction. Because your mind is distracted, right? It's somewhere instead of focusing the task at hand, which in that moment is driving. And you are driving, right? And I'm sure you're safe. But can you see how the mind just distracts and wanders and kind of deviates? So it happens it happens all the time. So it distracts. Um, and when the mind is doing these things, um, largely it's doing these things from a place of trying to keep you safe, right? It's protecting you from some form of danger, some form of risk or failure, something that's going to bring you some pain or harm, right? Um, but because the mind is doing these things, right? It's magnifying, it's imagining, it's neglecting all the goodness, and it's distracting you from what you want to be doing, right? Because it's doing these things, it's preventing us from achieving what we really want to be achieving, right? Who we want to be and how we want to be moving forward. And more often than not, the mind is leading us, right? The mind is leading us and it's almost against us, right? And this idea of, it's the enemy, right? And it's not the enemy in a bad sense, but it's not helpful, right? But doing the work that you're doing here and that we do in Be the Energy um, is all about you intentionally learning to lead the mind, right? So rather than the mind leading you, you lead the mind, right? Because you are bigger than your mind, right? This is about you, the beautiful soul that you are, who has a mind, who has a body, who has a soul, right? Um, and it is this idea, going back to the text in the Bhagavad Gita, is befriending your mind, right? Your mind becomes your friend. And if you learn to conquer the mind, right, you can be and achieve so much, right? So much more with such goodness from your heart, in your energy, because the mind is really the number one thing that is actually kind of limiting us and holding us back, right? Is what is going on in our brain. Um, and the Bhagavad Gita says that there are three miseries in this world, right? Number one, there's miseries from nature, right? There's extreme weather, earthquakes and volcanoes and storms, and all the extremities that nature can bring. There are miseries from other living entities, right? So kind of nasty, negative, harmful people in this world. Um, deadly animals, maybe even like poisonous plants, or like anything that can create harm from any other living entities. And then number three, it talks about the misery from our mind and our body, right? And today we've been focusing on the mind, but of course, body in terms of disease, right? And old age, okay? But actually, it explained that no matter what happens in the world, the good or the not so good, right? No matter what happens in the world, the only misery really is our perception of what's happening in the world, right? What's happening in our life. And what we choose to focus on and what we choose to then indulge in, right? And that happens in our mind. And therefore, the real number one misery really boils down to an unmanaged mind, right? That is the actual misery. Because if you learn to manage your mind, even if the other miseries that happen around us, right, the nature and the other living entities, whatever it might be, which they will happen, by the way, right? We know that that's the world we live in. When you manage your mind, they won't affect you as much, right? They won't cause as much pain. Right? You are able to navigate through them from your heart with more ease, with more understanding. than you would without. Right? So can you see the power of the mind? It's everything, right? So that's the 4 things the unmanaged mind does. Magnifies, it imagines, it neglects, and it distracts. So what do you do to manage it? Right? You might be thinking, and this is a whole other class, by the way, right? But in a nutshell, you make friends with it, right? You make your mind, you make your brain your friend, and you make it your best friend, right? It's the number one tool and resource that you have that like governs everything, right? But you get to lead it, you get to befriend it, and you get to befriend it on purpose, right? And you do this by 3 things. Number 1, you notice. You notice where your brain's at, right? You notice where your mind's at. Is it in a helpful place or an unhelpful place? That's it. Number 2, you nurture and normalize, right? You intentionally nurture and normalize where your brain's at. So if you notice that it's in a helpful place, right? You nurture it, you feed it, you fuel it, and you keep going on in that helpful place. But if you notice that it's in an unhelpful place, right, you also get to nurture it and you normalize it, which is, of course, you're thinking, I should be further ahead by now. Of course, it's totally normal to think that because A, B, and C, right? You nurture that thinking and you normalize that thinking because when you do, then you can do the 3rd step, which is you get to navigate to a new and inspiring and more motivating place in your mind. Right? So if you're thinking I should be further ahead by now and you normalize that and you kind of give it a hug, this is what I like to do, right? This is what I recommend. You give your brain a hug, you give those thoughts a hug, and then you send them on their way, and then you navigate to a new thought, right? And you identify what that is. Of course, I'm thinking I should be further ahead by now, but actually, this is where I'm at. And this is what I'm working on. And this is really important to me because A, B, and C, right? So you notice, you nurture and normalize, and you navigate to a new and inspiring place in your mind. This is how you can manage your unmanaged mind. And you can always come back to this no matter where you find yourself, no matter what's going on, right? You have to ground yourself in the present moment. And if you need a prompt, literally the question I would offer you, and this is what I offer my clients all the time, stick it on a post-it in front of you. What am I thinking? That's it. You just get to ask yourself, what am I thinking? Right? You pause, you breathe, right? Connect with yourself, go in your heart and ask yourself, what am I thinking? What is my brain offering me? Find those thoughts and then do that 3-step process, right? And that simple and yet super insightful question will reveal all. This is your work, right? This is the work that we do. Finally, let me leave you with a thought, something for you to take away and something for you to practice, which is this. When I manage my mind, anything is possible. I love that thought. When I manage my mind, anything is possible. Like when you think that, how does that make you feel in your body? Right? When you think that thought, how does that make you feel? For me, there's just this real kind of like compelled, go out there, go do my thing. Like, yes, come on, let's go. So that's our class today. If you liked this and you want to go deeper into self-discovery and managing your mind and doing this inner work and really doing what you love, come join us in Be the Energy, my online group coaching program.
So there you have it. 4 things the unmanaged mind does, and 3 simple steps to overcome that. I hope you found that useful and it sparked something for you. Remember the thought: when I manage my mind, anything is possible. And that literally applies to anything. Yes, we need a strategy and we have to take action. But for me, it's always about paying attention to the mindset and the energy. What is going on within, what is going on in your mind, what is going on in your body when you are showing up and taking action. And so when we manage our mind, anything is possible. I love that thought, and it is something I lean into all the time. So thank you for joining me today. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know what your biggest takeaway was, what what you noticed, what came up for you. And you can drop me an email, support@nemishapatelowen.com, or DM me on LinkedIn or Instagram and share your thoughts and what came up for you. I would love to hear that, and also be able to offer you any further insights. So thank you again for being here. As I said earlier, be sure to join the waiting list for Be the Energy to get some sneak peeks and early bird offers. www.nemishapatelowen.com/Be the Energy. All the links that I have shared will be in the show notes, so you can go there. Thank you. Until next time, keep shining your light, and may you always live your true self. Namaste.